Hi everyone, so today we'll be presenting our final project for Sci 361, which is project 3. So first of all, we will introduce this subject a little bit. Recent years have seen a significant increase in the population of young children with special needs, which require extraordinary parenting and place great demands upon them. The most types of special needs of children that appear in family court cases are acute life-threatening medical conditions, chronic and pervasive developmental disorders, and psychological and behavioral disorders. So co-parents who cannot effectively exchange information can be very difficult for these children. So let's follow to our first question. If a child is suspecting of having a diagnosable disorder and has had several negative interactions with law enforcement, should the parents be required by courts to take their child to therapy or to medicate them? So our first topic here is parents may be unable to provide appropriate care for their children. So we all know that children need safety and stability. They need nurturing parents who can meet their needs consistently. The need is clear. Child welfare agencies and juvenile dependency courts must have specific strategies to identify and address clients' abuse. Children who do not who have come to a child welfare agency's attention due to an abuse or neglect report are likely to do so again. However, community services may not be organized to support them. And conflict between their parents, of course, increases their symptoms like anxiety, depression, noncompliance, inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity, anger, and many other comorbidities. Parenting a child suspected of having a diagnosable disorder requires vigilant advocacy for specialized education and behavioral training, often coupled with complex regimens of medication. Chronic developmental disorders vary in severity and pervasiveness. Some disabilities are undetected in young children, and this presents a challenge to parents trying to make their case before the family court. In addition, there is no medical test for a great number of disorders, which presents a challenge to the court. The court's immediate necessity to have information about the child's special needs may require that the case be heard on a special set where more time for inquiry can occur. A psychological examination of the child with a report submitted to the court allows it to consider the child's specific disabilities and treatment needs in designing a custody plan. Rigorous and sophisticated educational and behavior modification programs. Literature points out the importance of behavioral modification programs, which can even be good to strengthen parent-child relationships and improve their communication. Parents must become mini experts in their child's particular needs in order to advocate to secure assistance for them. It has also been suggested that the police tend to respond to the unusual behaviors of mentally disordered individuals in a different manner than in non-disordered individuals. When experiencing stressful life events such as confrontation situations with the police, persons with some mental disorders experience much stronger negative emotions. Unfortunately, some of those who suffer from mental disorders appear to engage in dangerous antisocial behaviors as features of their mental illness, especially when off their medication regimen. The present findings revealed in the study of Johnson 2011 revealed that mentally disordered suspects were significantly more likely to act violently and resist the police. However, after these characteristics were controlled, mentally disordered suspects were not more likely than others to receive physical force by the police. Also, other relevant facts here, the number of wrongful arrests and convictions involving juveniles is unacceptable. 33%. And the role of developmental immaturity in admission of guilt may be amplified in the United States due to the use of high-pressure interrogation techniques and the threat of punitive sentences for juveniles. Another very interesting subject here is the interactions law enforcement in autism. Anecdotal evidence suggests law enforcement officers are often ill-prepared to deal with situations involving persons with autism spectrum disorder. While media accounts have tied high-profile violent crimes to autistic perpetrators, research suggests they are more likely to be violent crime victims than perpetrators. And here are my references. Thank you. And you will be with my other partners.
Question number 2. What if a neuropsychological test indicated that the child had some suicidal ideation? Should the parents be required by courts to take their child to therapy or medicate them? First, I will start by introducing you guys to the topic of neuropsychological testing. So, what is it? It is an evaluation that determines the presence and severity of cognitive dysfunction. The suicide risk assessment was developed to assist clinicians into making an assessment and care decisions regarding patients who present with suicidal ideation or provides reason to believe that there is cause for concern. So, what should parents do when the results of the neuropsychological testing of their children is known to be of a suicide ideation? Parents should be required to get treatment for their children. Among teenagers, suicide is a leading cause of death, so it is something to really be concerned about. As a caregiver, parents should pay close attention to their child since suicide is an accumulation of thoughts and it is usually a sign of depression that can be noticed through their behaviors. So, parents are supposed to notice if they show any symptoms of anger, isolation, or sadness on the way they are acting. What if parents avoid treatment for their children? The reasons behind those negative thoughts might continue to be unknown if they don't do therapy and don't tackle what is actually bringing them these sadness or these anger. Child suicide thoughts may worsen and death can occur. This can lead to a lot of guilt because their parents did not take the actions that they were supposed to by taking their children to therapy. Suicide ideation is usually a sign of depression where the brain changes over time without treatment. So on the picture below, you can see the brain of a person who is depressed and the brain of a person who is not depressed. Having depression can implicate the areas of the brain such as the amygdala, hippocampus, and the thalamus. Depression can cause forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty concentrating, and other areas of the day-to-day lives. So it can really affect their future if they never get treatment for it. Treatment options for suicide ideation. The most effective is psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavior psychology and the dialectical behavior therapy. Another way to treat is by medication and family and friend support. Parents should talk openly to them by expressing concern, support, and love, or if the child is not comfortable talking to them, then they can suggest for them to talk to another trusted adult who can provide with support and advice for them during this time. These are my references.
Hello, my name is NB Jen, and I will be discussing question number 3. So question number 3 asks, what factors might influence a parent's willingness and or ability to put a child in therapy or medicate them? Some factors that I've found that influence a parent's ability to put their child in therapy or medicate them are social class, access to resources, and education. So for social class and its effect on ability, we must look at SES or socioeconomic status. For families with high socioeconomic status, the parents would have an increased ability to put their child in therapy and medicate them. Some examples which would enhance their ability to do so is by being able to pay for therapy and medications, either out of pocket or with health insurance, being able to take time off of work to take care of their child and make sure that their child has all the resources available to get help. They could also be able to pay for at-home caregiver or at-home therapy while they go to work. Additionally, if the family lives in a wealthy neighborhood, the parents are able to provide their child with the highly funded community-based therapy centers. Now for families with low SES, the parents would have a decreased ability to put their child in therapy and medicate them because they are not able to pay for therapy and medication, and they might not be able to afford health insurance to cover these costs. They are also not able to take time off of work to aid their child. For example, if a parent is working paycheck to paycheck in order to provide financial security for their family, they would not be able to take time off to drive their child to and from therapy, since missing a day of work would mean missing a paycheck. Additionally, they may not be able to get adequate health care in a timely manner for their child. For example, if they are not able to pay for therapy at private practices, they will have to seek out help from free mental health service organizations, which can be fully booked, and therefore their child may not get help in a timely manner. The next factor that I want to focus on is the access to resources and its effect on ability. Healthcare is a big barrier which can influence whether or not you get medical or mental health care. Recently, fewer households have health insurance, and between 2000 and 2004, healthcare coverage costs increased 35.9%, while average income earnings only increased 12.4%. In other words, a parent's ability to pay for their child's therapy and or medication through health insurance is getting slimmer and slimmer because the cost of healthcare is increasing at alarming rates. Parents may decide to put off a visit to the therapist or get help for their child because they are uninsured and have no other way of paying for the cost of therapy and medication. The next factor that I want to focus on is education and its effect on ability. Psychoeducation is a very important step in understanding a diagnosis and improving medication adherence. Psychoeducation is basically the process of providing information to those seeking/receiving mental health services. So when parents lack this information, it would decrease their ability to put their child in therapy and medicate them. For example, the lack of knowledge surrounding the available resources for mental health services and where/how they can get it for their child may decrease help-seeking behavior because they simply do not know the available sources and from where to seek them from. Another example is a lack of knowledge and understanding what medications are available, and the importance of medication in some cases may negatively influence medication adherence. Next, the factors that influence a parent's willingness can come from cultural differences, such as cultural traditions, religious affiliations, societal influences, generational familial beliefs, language barriers, and so much more. Next, I'm going to focus on how cultural differences affect individuals. So culture affects an individual's help-seeking behavior, treatment expectations, and beliefs of mental health services. For example, refugees who've moved to the U.S. seeking asylum may have completely different belief systems regarding mental health care than an individual who has lived in the U.S. since birth. This could be because of the differences between Western versus Eastern medicine. For example, the individual who was born in the U.S. has grown up around the Western medicine ideals, so typically they go to the doctor to get diagnosed and given Western medicine in order to alleviate the problem. On the other hand, the individual who grew up around Eastern medicine may engage in acupuncture and other forms of medicine such as herbal medications. So the parent's willingness to put their child in therapy and medicate them may depend on whether the parent's culture believes in Western medication. Another example of how cultural differences affect willingness can be seen through this example. A refugee whose child is experiencing insomnia or headaches may believe that these symptoms are caused by an upset ancestral spirit. This can be seen as a cultural belief where they worship spirits and ancestors. So this would influence the parent's willingness and decision to seek out the typical Western medicine treatment for ailments. Lastly, I wanted to talk about parental involvement in therapy and how it would affect willingness. A study that examined therapists within session involvement of parents in community-based outpatient mental health treatment showed that therapists involved parents more within therapy sessions when the child had higher levels of behavioral problems, the parents reported higher levels of internalized caregiver strain, and when the therapist was more experienced. So in other words, if a child had lower levels of behavioral problems, the parents did not have high levels of caregiving strain, and if the therapist was more inexperienced, it would affect the parents' involvement and willingness to put them or keep their child in therapy and medicate them. And these are my references.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Castañeda, and I will go through question number 4, which is, what role does culture play, if any? The short answer is everything. But I will talk about the individual cultures that I think need to be advocated for this project. That parents have the right to refuse mental health treatments, for themselves and their children, or if they don't deserve to have that right. My main source for this question is an article from David Satcher, who focused on the effect culture, race, and ethnicity have on mental health. I will talk about Hispanic Americans first and focus mainly on the children aspect of it. According to the lengthy article, Satcher states that Latino youth experience a significant number of mental health problems than white youth, such as higher rates of depression, drug use, and suicide ideation. Many parents state that the symptoms they feel is due to susto, which is fright, nervios, which are nerves, mal de ojo, which is the evil eye, or ataques, which can be like panic attacks or anxiety. It is critical to recognize these words because many Hispanic families will use this terminology to decline to believe that what they are feeling is related to any type of mental health. Many people who are Hispanic American believe that faith is important and that the reason why they feel a depression or anxiety or any type of like mental health like problems is because they have lost their faith in God. To give a personal example, my cousin died by suicide and she had a lot of problems with depression. But one thing that she did do, she was very like she was really into the religion, if I'm being honest, which is totally fine. You know, everybody is does whatever they need to do. She would tell her mom a lot, my aunt, that she had a lot of problems and that she really wanted to go see somebody. But one of the things that my aunt did is kind of just push her away, be like, no, like you don't need that. You know, why would you want to talk to a stranger when you can talk to me? You don't need to go, or the reason you're feeling this way is because you are depressed. Um, it really shows how in the Hispanic culture, at least from my perspective and from like my biases and from what I have seen in my friends and my family, that having a faith in God is going to help with a lot of stuff, and mainly with this type of mental health issues. I'm not saying that if someone is spiritual, it's wrong or anything like that. I'm just saying that when, if there is a child that is reaching out because they need to talk to somebody, more often than not, it's true. It's definitely important to have a child go to a licensed clinical therapist or social worker or marriage family therapist, because they need to be involved in that type of counseling. Moving on, the article also stated that Central American refugees, mainly children, have higher levels of PTSD and depression. This is due to the fact that, these families walk great lengths from Central America all the way, sometimes up to here in San Diego, or maybe, anywhere along the border is, that's a really long trip. And it does cause some trauma for children who were okay being where they were because maybe they didn't know a lot of stuff that was going on, or their parents kept them sheltered. But this causes a lot of trauma for children because they had to leave the only home that they knew, the only place that they knew, in order to live a better life. This is justified, and to parents, I'm sorry, I don't know how to phrase it. To parents, it makes a lot of sense that they would say, when we get there, it'll be okay. Like, just, deal with it, suck it up, so that, like if all your problems will go away as soon as we get to the country we desire to be. Um, there is also a lack of availability for mental health due to the language barrier between clients and clinicians. Even here in San Diego, I have seen, working in the mental health field, I have seen a lot of clinicians who have difficulty trying to relate their message and show the clients that they are here for them. We're here to help them as much as possible. But because there is that language barrier, it doesn't really help the clients as much as they need. Um, Sometimes there is that, the other lack of availability, which is the lack of health insurance with Hispanic Americans mainly. due to the citizenship and immigration status. Sometimes when there is an immigration issue, parents tell their children to either suck it up or deal with it because they don't want to be outed that they don't have any citizenship status, or because they have been dealing with that for a lot of their lives, and if they turned out okay, their children will be okay as well. So moving on to the African American culture, they have higher rates of mental illnesses among African American children and youth than white children and youth. Um, and they are more likely to have their needs unmet, which could be as simple as a house, a a family, food, any type of shelter like that. I will move on to that in just a little bit. Um, African Americans report more distress than white people, but the article does state that there is no specific cause if the differences are due to either socioeconomic status or demographic differences. It could also be because of the environment that they're around. It could also be depending on the type of year that the youth are living in. If a youth is living in, the moments of right now where there is a lot of racism in the society right now, it could also affect them and feel that they are more distressed, and I agree that they are. So going on to um, the system. So 40, in the article states that 42% of children and youth who are in child welfare programs meet the DSM criteria for mental disorders. This could be because the system doesn't go out of their way to make sure if children are mentally okay, just physically. And it's something that I feel like is neglect upon this type of system, because just because somebody looks like they're healthy, they might not be. You know, there are many people in the world, and including famous people that we see all the time, celebrities. If I bring up Kate Spade, she's not African American, but like just as an example, that everybody thought she was great. She had her business, she had all the purses, the wallets, and everything, and it came as a shock that she she took her own life. And it just goes to show that just because somebody looks like they're okay doesn't mean that their mental health is okay. Physical Mental health is just as important as physical health, and it's something that the system needs to work on it to try to better for the youth, because the youth are literally like it's the future. We really want to make sure that the youth have more availability to mental health, places that offer that type of mental health, um, because they need that. So there is also less availability for help because African Americans feel more comfortable speaking to somebody in their culture. However, there aren't many clinicians who are African Americans. Um, excuse me. They rely on ministers who play various mental health roles, such as a counselor, diagnostician, or a referral agent. And sometimes this might help the African American culture, but like I stated before, it is better to go to somebody that is focusing on this, that has a lot of experience with this. But I would also understand as to why there is not that availability, because I myself know that like I would rather talk to somebody in my culture than somebody in a different culture who isn't going to really understand what I'm dealing with. There is also a lack of accessibility due to employers not offering mental health coverage with their health insurance. And this could be a reason as to why adults don't reach out to get mental health counseling, or why parents decide that their children doesn't need to go because it might not be offered, or they have to pay more, and they can't afford it. Um, like I said before, this is my main source, and um, this was published in 2001, which is a little old, and I understand that, you know, it has to be like within 10 years. But I decided to go against it because I think this article really emphasized that there is so many effects of culture with mental health, and how every culture is different, and every culture has like plays a different role in their mental health. And I think it just is really important, and all the information on this article really is still relatable to this day. um, Thank you, I hope you enjoyed it.
This is Erica. I'm going to be discussing the extra credit portion of this project that discusses a story in the news that highlights one of these questions, more specifically going into the topic of how culture plays a role in parents not seeking out medicine or medical treatment, basically. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about religion and how religious beliefs impact medical care. So in 2017, there was a couple who were expecting, and they gave birth to a baby daughter, and she was not birthed in a hospital. They birthed her at home without any medical professionals. They were members of a church that believe in faith healing and shun medical treatments of any kind, really. And their daughter ended up passing away due to cease of breathing, and she was also very much premature. She was born 3 pounds and 6 ounces, and she ended up dying even after the parents turned away authority advice to seek medical attention and get doctor treatment and all that. So in this instance, religion played a huge role in them avoiding medical treatment, and the church they were a part of was the Followers of Christ Church. And just some more background on this church. They were the 5th set of parents to face criminal charges in the last 9 years. From this church, this couple ended up going to prison due to neglect. And like I said before, the church shuns modern medicine. They claim that God always heals. And actually 78 children were buried in the Followers of Christ Church Cemetery between the years of 1955 and 1998. And it is said that 21 of those children could have been saved using modern medicine. So this isn't to say, though, that religion is not helpful when it comes to seeking out medical treatments or things like that. It's been said by multiple studies that prayer actually does have some health benefits when it comes to longevity and psychological well-being and mental health. It is said that experts have said that substituting prayer for medical treatment can lead to more serious complications, including death, especially with serious conditions like anxiety or depression. So it's never a good idea to substitute prayer and religion for medical treatment, especially when the condition is severe. But it is said that numerous studies have found benefits for people doing the prayers, even if it doesn't always benefit those who they are praying for. So, yes, thank you.